I'm not going to sit here and bore you with a super long intro. If you clicked on this video, chances are you know what a draft grades video is. And if you don't, I'll run it down for you real quick. Pretty self-explanatory. Basically, we're going team by team, talking about the draft. I'm going to assign a letter grade to every single pick and then give an overall grade for the team in question. Going to be talking about all 32 teams over the summer. That's my big twist that I put on it. Not exactly reinventing the wheel, but not a lot of people give each team their own video to shine. Usually it's division by division, conference by conference, and those are totally legitimate ways of going about things and probably take a lot less work and save you a lot of time, but hey, I like to do things a little bit differently. Keep in mind, though, because of that time crunch, this intro is pre-recorded. I'm recording this all the way back in May. Who knows how long these videos will take to come out, so just keep that in mind. You know what team you're watching. You don't need me to tell you in the intro. You clicked on the video, you can read the title, you can see the thumbnail. Two quick things to keep in mind. Number one, I'm not a professional. I don't claim to be a professional. I am very much an amateur, so if I disagree with something your favorite team did, I'm not saying I know better than your favorite general manager, your favorite scout, if you're a freak and have one of those. I'm just saying I didn't agree with the pick. I didn't agree with the process. That's my opinion. Feel free to disagree and let me know in the comments below why you disagree with me or agree with the team, whichever it may be. Regardless, the point is, I'm not trying to say I'm better than anybody here. I just have opinions and I like to share them. Also, I have changed my grading scale up from last year, and that is to say that I actually have a grading scale now, as you can see on the screen. This will keep things more uniform, allow me to stay more consistent, and also provide some transparency between me and you as the viewer. So, with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and dive into whatever team we're talking about today. The best way I can describe my thoughts on this Minnesota Vikings draft class this year is that I was very whelmed by their thought process. I wasn't underwhelmed, I wasn't overwhelmed. There wasn't anything where I was like, oh god, it's over. Minnesota did it again. They pulled off something crazy. But there also weren't any picks where I was sitting there wondering why Kwesi still has a job. But in all seriousness, like, I didn't have too strong of thoughts on this class. It was very solid. It was a good draft class. And I feel like taking a look at Donovan Jackson, he is a pretty prime example of that. Now, I do think this is a little bit better than like a fine pick if we want to get nitpicky about adjectives. This was a good pick. I really like what they did here. However, right, you look at my draft grade criteria at the beginning of the video, a B+, that is what it says. I really like this pick. However, a little asterisk next to it, and the little asterisk that comes with the Jackson pick for me is, number one, I felt like it was early. I did not have a first round grade on Jackson. I had a true second round grade on him. Felt like he was much more of a day two player. And I also just thought there was a better player available. And in situations like these, obviously, you have to have a little bit of nuance because you can't just say, well, this player was graded higher, so better. You have to consider scheme fits. You have to consider what kind of play style and things of that nature a player brings to the table. So it's not like I was looking at this pick and I was mad the Vikings passed on Tyler Booker for Donovan Jackson. Because while I did have a higher grade on Booker, they're different players. Booker is not a movable lineman. He is the immovable force, right? He sits down and you're not getting by him. That's not what Minnesota wants. They want someone who kicks out, gets out on the run, can pull a little bit, can climb to the second level. They're not a gap scheme. They're a little bit more zone-based. And obviously, Tyler Booker wasn't on the board for this hypothetical to make any sense, but he's just like the polar opposite of what Minnesota would want, right? The player that I feel like would have been a better pick here is Wyatt Milam, the guard out of West Virginia, converted tackle, whatever you want to call him. He was my top offensive lineman on the board. I thought he was a good bit better than Jackson, and he can do all of that kind of stuff for you. So those are the two big reasons that, and like I said, the just overall value, why this is a B+ and not an A or higher. Now, I do think this was a good pick for the Vikings. I absolutely understand the thought process. You're going into this draft thinking, what can we do to make J.J. McCarthy's life easier? Well, we've got these great tackles. We just added a center. We just added a guard. And Blake Brandel, while he's a really nice backup, he's somebody that can start in a pinch and we feel good about it. We want someone with a little bit more upside as a starter. So going out and getting Donovan Jackson makes a ton of sense because he is going to be better than Blake Brandel. Now, I will say that starts to kind of put you into the drafting for need as opposed to, drafting for I don't want to say drafting for value because then I sound like some PFF nerd, but like the idea of just not boxing yourself in during the draft, right? You want to keep an open mind with the draft. However, with a guy like this, given that Minnesota doesn't have like a ton of weaknesses and it's not like the board was flooded with superstars or anything, I can't get too mad about that. So that's not playing too much into the grade. But other than that, with Jackson as a player, like I think he fits them very well. He can play in a zone scheme. He can get out and move. He can climb to the second level. He's a good pass protector. Needs to work on his footwork a little bit, but his baseline is solid. As a run blocker, I like the way he gets out and moves. Like I said, good technique. Play strength isn't perfect, but it's passable, and I think it can improve, so that's a bonus there. He also has that ability to kick out to tackle in a pinch if you need it. You know, Christian Darrisaw, if he's not ready for week 1, God forbid, or even worse, knock on wood, he gets hurt again, that, you know, he's someone that can come in and step in at tackle as opposed to Walter Roos, your current backup tackle, and then you kick Brandel into guard and you're feeling a lot better about your line than you would be otherwise. So definitely a good pick for the Vikings here. Maybe not the perfect pick, maybe not the best value, but a damn good pick, a damn respectable pick. And that's what I'd say about their next pick as well. Ty Felton, the wide receiver out of Maryland, who unfortunately was one of my guys. I say unfortunately because as a Bears fan, it breaks my heart to see him go to Minnesota, but the objective draft, quote unquote, analyst in me, the draft nerd, I guess is a better way to put it. I'm far from a professional to be calling myself an analyst. I like this pick for the Vikings a good bit. This is another one where I really like it, and the but this time is that I feel like they should have went defense here. You know, you look, especially in that secondary, man, you just lost Cam Bynum. Harrison Smith, God love him, is not getting any younger. Josh Metellus is a damn good player, but I don't want to see him as a full-time starter in the secondary. I want to see him as wherever we need a guy, we're going to put him and not have to worry about him playing safety full-time or anything like that. So, you know, I would have loved to see you take a look at some of the safeties that would have been on the board at this point. Craig Woodson would have been a nice pick here. Lathan Ransom would have been a nice pick. Malachi Moore would have been an awesome replacement for Cam Bynum. Someone like Jalen Reed, who slipped really far because of his injury, but is a very, very talented player. That would have been a great pickup here in the 3rd round. I think he absolutely would have been worth a 3rd round pick. I mean, there's going to be some people out there that are like, you're advocating for a guy who went the 6th round and the 3rd round. I am, because I think he's better than what that draft capital is reflecting. But the point is, I just feel like that would have been a better position to attack here, or maybe go interior defensive line here. You know, you just brought in 2 big names in Javon Hargrave and Jonathan Allen, but both those guys are on the wrong side of 30. So those are, you know, you could have brought in someone to kind of build up behind them. It was a very nice defensive tackle class. Regardless, though, that is like a nitpick, right? I really like Ty Felton. He makes a ton of sense as someone who can compete for that wide receiver 3 spot with Speedy Naylor. Could also just be the starter opposite Justin Jefferson. You've got Jordan Addison, who's probably going to be suspended the first couple games. And honestly, who knows if he's going to be in the cards long term. You already paid Justin Jefferson. We'll see if they want to end up paying a second receiver. Point more so being with that he can be a starting wide receiver for you. He was very productive at Maryland. Very quick player, very smooth mover. Ran super fast, but that speed translates onto tape and onto the field. It isn't just a combine stat of a 4.37. He ran every bit of that on tape. So I think this is a great pick for them. Again, would have liked to see them go defense. Really would have liked to see them go in the secondary specifically. But if it had to be a receiver, I like the fit of Felton a good bit. Then we get into the 5th round and they trade down. You get like a 2-for-1 by acquiring Sam Howell from the Seahawks. And then you also take Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins out of Georgia. And starting with Howell, I love that pickup. Just going to keep this brief. Makes a ton of sense. Minnesota's got like the whole QB factory thing going on. Howell is a quarterback that when he was coming into the league had a ton of upside. Obviously hasn't exactly reached that upside yet. So maybe Kevin O'Connell can finally be the one to get it out of him. And if not, you know, no harm, no foul. You traded down in the 6th round, or in the 5th round, excuse me. They have 2 6th round picks. That's why my brain was there. But, you know, you traded down in the 5th round to pick him up. It's not the end of the world if he doesn't pan out. You can cut your losses and live to fight another day. Whereas with Dawkins, not a very productive player. someone who you're betting on the traits here. And in the 5th round, that's fine. I thought there were better players available on the board as a true interior defensive lineman, or if you wanted one of these like hybrid edge guys. So that's kind of where my mind's at. I get wanting this type of player for Brian Flores, though. As I already said, the interior defensive linemen they have aren't exactly the youngest guys in the world. So wanting to stack up and get someone to maybe develop behind those dudes makes a ton of sense. Ingram-Dawkins does have a good bit of upside, but we'll have to see if that pans out in any way. 6th round, they end up making my favorite pick they made. We'll talk about my favorite player they added through the draft here when we get to their UDFAs. But in terms of my favorite player they picked, Kobe King, linebacker, Penn State. I thought this was a great pickup. He makes a ton of sense for what they need. They need depth at linebacker, and in the 6th round, that's absolutely appropriate to go that route. Specifically because you look at the 2 linebackers they have in Blake Cashman and Ivan Pace. Not taking any shots at them. They are a tremendous tandem. They've missed some games. They've gotten banged up. So having somebody that can take some of the pressure off of them, come in on early down specifically, and play downhill as a run defender, that's why Kobe King is going to primarily be a backup throughout his career, in my opinion. Very good run defender, has one of the best floors as a run defender out of any linebacker in this class, but he does not have the movement skills or the fluidity to be a good coverage player, in my opinion. So coming in as a backup run stuffing linebacker, probably getting some special teams reps here in the 6th round makes a ton of sense. Like I said, that was probably my favorite pick they made in terms of actual draft picks. And then Gavin Bartholomew with the next pick was fine, pretty inoffensive. I thought there were better players on the board at his position. You take a look just at some of the guys that got drafted. If you wanted this, route running move tight end who is fluid and, is just going to get himself open, Thomas Fidone out of Nebraska was there. I liked him a lot more. And then also a player they picked up as a UDFA, Benjamin Jurasik, I thought would have been a substantially better pick. Again, this is somewhere where also I really would have liked to see them take a, take a secondary player. This was pick 26 in the 6th round. We're going to do this live. Let's look at the corners and safeties that went after that. Robert Longerbeam out of Rutgers would have been awesome. Micah Robinson out of Tulane would have been awesome. That's at corner. At safety, are there any names here that I'm going to pound the table for? RJ Mickens was still on the board. And then Hunter Wohler out of Wisconsin would have been very, very nice as well. But regardless, it was a very inoffensive, fine pick. I get it. You want to give JJ McCarthy more weapons, and he can come in. You lost your tight end 3 to Jacksonville, I want to say he went. So you get somebody who can come in as a little bit of a route runner and serve as that 3rd tight end. But like I said, I want to talk about some of the UDFAs here real quick to close this out. Benjamin Jurasik was my favorite move the Vikings made through the draft because I thought he was an incredible player. I had a 3rd round grade on Jurasik, a late 3rd. I wasn't in love with this year's tight end class, so maybe that was more vindictive of that. But as a hybrid player, reminds me a lot of Ben Sinnott, who came out last year out of Kansas State. I loved him. Someone who can play tight end, play slot wide receiver, play fullback, play H-back, maybe even take a handoff or 2 if you really need him to. I like him a lot more as a 3rd tight end for the Vikings. I thought I think he has the upside of a true tight end too. Someone that can just make plays where he's a solid route runner, good hands, good blocker. Sure, he's not the biggest guy in the world, but again, is that tight end 2 or 3. He doesn't really need to be. So I like him a lot more than Bartholomew. Look at some of the other UDFAs they picked up. Max Brosmer was huge. I honestly think there's a world where he ends up being your QB2 instead of Sam Howell. I had a 4th round grade on him. Loved him coming out of Minnesota as just a smart backup. Makes a ton of sense. Is kind of like the clipboard Jesus for a Kevin O'Connell offense. A couple other guys here. Bryson Nesbitt out of North Carolina, another tight end. You've got 3 guys there kind of competing for that 3rd spot. And like I said, I think Jurasik's the best out of the 3. Logan Brown coming over from Kansas as a UDFA. Wasn't a player I liked as much as a lot of people, but as a UDFA, absolutely Very athletic, traitsy tackle guard prospect. So definitely can't complain there. I would very much like to see him end up as one of those backup tackles for them, specifically maybe take Walter Ruse's job. And then the other big name, Tyler Beatty out of BYU. Batty, not sure how to say his name if I'm being honest. Not someone that I watched. I know a lot of people liked him. Figured I'd bring him up because there's a real chance he makes the roster, judging by how others talk about him. Not someone that I got back to when I was picking up some of my other players that got drafted. That's kind of where I prioritized. If I didn't watch a player that got drafted, I watched them. There might have been one or two free agents I got to, or UDFAs that I got to, I should say. But, Beatty wasn't one of them, unfortunately. As a whole, though, with Minnesota's draft, I'm going to give them a B. Like I said, this was the definition of a good draft. Wasn't great, wasn't bad. It was good. The Vikings got, I would say, off rip, a starter. Felton could push for that wide receiver 3 spot. We'll have to see. Kobe King is going to play his role well. Bartholomew, like I said, might not end up even making the roster, so I'm not too pressed about him. Howal from the trade could be a solid QB2. Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins, we'll have to see what he is. He's more of a developmental player. And then Donovan Jackson will be starting day 1. So, very respectable class. They did a solid job with what they had. Didn't have a ton of capital. Just really would have liked to see them go a little bit more aggressive towards the secondary after losing Cam Bynum. And when considering the fact that who is their opposite starting corner of Mekhi Blackman, it's Isaiah Rodgers. And then his competition is Jeff Okudah. That could have been a spot where you could have gotten a little bit more aggressive, but I digress. Definitely a solid draft class, and one that will probably fall around the middle of the pack when it's all said and done with my draft grades. I totally forgot to record an outro for this video, so I hope you all enjoyed. If you did, please make sure to leave a like down below, as it does help out the channel a ton. It shows your support, it shows you care, and I really do appreciate it. Also, make sure to subscribe for more NFL content throughout the offseason. We've got 30 more teams to talk about. We've got film to break down. I've got some miscellaneous videos in my back pocket you won't want to miss. So like I said, definitely make sure to subscribe. And also make sure to let me know down in the comments below what you thought about the Minnesota Vikings draft class. Do you think it was better than I gave it credit for, worse than I gave it credit for? Are you in line with me? Do you disagree on one or two picks? Either way, let me know in the comments. I love hearing your feedback. But once again, above all else, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you all have a wonderful day, evening, night, afternoon, whatever time of day it is for you. I hope you enjoy it, because you're all wonderful people, and you truly do deserve it.
Had a chance on the throwback. This was an ill-advised throw. What an unbelievable catch by Cole Kmet. And he cups it too. No movement when he hits the ground, tucked up against his shoulder. Wow.
Using that